Hey, what's up guys? My name is Cherno. Welcome back to my game engine series. Today we're continuing on with what we did last time. Last time we talked about scene serialization and deserialization. Check out that video up there if you haven't already. And today we're actually going to be adding some UI to be able to like open certain scenes to save as, so that we can save to a custom file path and all that stuff, instead of the little test that we had where we always wrote to and read from the same exact file. And we'll also be adding like a little file new so that we can create a new scene and then build all of that stuff up. So it should be pretty exciting. Let's dive right into the code and get this party started. So the first thing that I want to do is, well, let's take a look at where we left off. Probably useful. So we have file and then serialize, deserialize. That's all fine. If we press deserialize, we'll load our example.hazel file and we can change whatever we want to it. So let's maybe move the red square up a little bit, and then we can serialize it. And then that way, well, first of all, we have one problem. If we deserialize it again, you can see that it just simply adds everything here. It doesn't actually, create like a blank scene for us. But also, obviously we're dealing with one file. Like that's not how things work. We want to be able to like save to a certain file that we specify and load from a certain file that we specify as well. So let's take a look at how we can do that. So the way, again, this is one of those things that is going to be different depending on who you ask. I personally do not like any kind of weird implementation of an open file or save file dialog that is dependent on the UI library you're using. That's weird. I feel like if you're on Windows, you should use the standard Windows like open file, save file dialog. They're there for a reason and they're really easy to use. Now, obviously the downside is that they're only on Windows, right? They're Windows only. So in other words, you can't, it's going to involve using the Windows API, the Win32 API, and obviously that's not going to work on like a Mac or anything like that. But that's okay. You can just implement it differently on a Mac. It's not that hard, and I think that it's probably not worth using like a third-party library for. You can, nothing wrong with that, but we'll do it ourselves. So inside core, what I'm going to do is actually no. Inside Hazel here, I'm going to add a new folder called utils. Thanks, Visual Studio. Don't know why you're being weird and why you hate me so much. Oh, there's already a folder called utils. Oh, that's probably from when I was writing it on stream. Well, that's fair enough. All right, in the utils folder, I will add a new item here called platform utils, right? And this platform utils, I think that's what I called it, yeah. Platform utils is going to just be a header file only that is going to be implemented per platform. It's not going to be implemented like we do like, vertex buffers and stuff. Are we still on buffer? I renamed it to vertex buffer. Anyway, did that in Hazel Dev, where we like to use some weird runtime switch. We don't need any of that because obviously this stuff will only compile on the platform you're compiling for. And then over here, we will, let's include string. We will basically have a bunch of utilities that are platform specific. So in this case, I'm going to make one called file dialogs, right? And this is a class purely for organizational purposes. You can have this as a function if you want. I just don't like the idea of it floating around in the Hazel namespace. You could add another namespace, but for this kind of stuff, I just like using classes, to be honest. Static std string, open file, and we'll take in a const char filter here, right? And then we'll have open file and save file. This filter is going to be a way for us to specify, and we might have to change this filter a little bit because it might be different on different platforms, but for now we'll just use the Windows version. This filter is just going to basically, like when you save, let's just do Control O maybe. You can see this kind of all files, and then you have a list of everything that you can choose from. That's what this filter text is going to be. Okay, so let's implement this. So obviously this can't be implemented in platform utils or CPP. We're going to do it in platform Windows. And I'm going to add a new item here, a CPP file called Windows Platform Utils. Include hzpch, include, where is it? Hazel utils, platform utils, namespace Hazel. And then obviously we're going to implement these functions. Let's copy them. Let's copy file dialogs. Let's get rid of static and let's add them here. Okay, and now we are ready to go. So this will return a string, which is going to be the file path, the absolute file path, because that's what we return. Okay, cool. So we obviously need the Win32 API for this. Now, the specific file that we're going to need, actually, because this required some troubleshooting earlier, is C dialogs, so common dialogs is what that kind of stands for, I guess. This refers to the 32-bit common dialog APIs, okay? So this is what they are. It's Windows only. We're of course in Windows Platform Utils, so that header file should be present, and so should the code. Now we're also going to need to include glfw, because we basically need to, when we open a file dialog, it's parented to an existing window, right? So if I click here, you can see it doesn't react, right? It doesn't let me interact with this because I'm blocked by a modal dialog. Now this needs to basically know the parent window, and we need to get the parent window from glfw. To get the actual hwind, the window handle that Windows uses, we need to also basically define glfw expose native win32 and then include glfw3 native. So the reason we do this is because you can see that if this is in fact defined, it lets us get the win32 things that we care about, such as the hwind, and that's what we need, the window handle. So I'm just going to copy and paste this from the code that I wrote earlier. This is what open file looks like. Let's go through this line by line. So we have an open file name. I'm using the ASCII version over here. Let's just get rid of these comments because they're fairly useless. We'll zero memory that struct because that struct has a whole bunch of stuff and we want to initialize it to 0. The struct size, we just have to set this for every win32 struct. It's how it works. hwind owner. So this is now where we're getting glfw get win32 window, and then we need the actual window. Now we need the application class, so Hazel core application. And then we simply do application get window, get native window. We've already got that API because I think we used it for I don't know what we used it for, to be honest. Let's get native window. Let's quickly see what that's used in, because I'm actually, inside, excuse me, inside IMGUI layer. So we had to get the glfw window and pass it into IMGUI so that it can hook up into events and stuff like that. So that's what we use that for. But then we can also now feed it into a new function, get win32 window, so that we can actually get the hwind back and set the owner of this new struct or this new dialog. Let's see, this is the file. This is just a buffer for the file. The max file size is, of course, the max file of this. You can just up that if you want. Filter is whatever we pass in here. Filter index is 1. I think this is basically which one is set by default or something like that. You can read this documentation online. This stuff's kind of important. So path must exist, file must exist, and no change directory. This last flag is very important. If you don't do this, funnily enough, when you call get open file name, it will actually change your working directory of your application to be the folder that you opened from. This may or may not be okay, depending on what you want, because if you're loading files relative to a master file that you've loaded, maybe that's a good thing. In most cases, though, I would like my working directory to actually remain, the working directory that the application has by default, which if you run it through Visual Studio is going to be this hazelnut folder, because it's the same folder as the project file. And if you look at under debugging, if you look at the working directory, you can see it's actually set to project directory, which is the directory with the VCX proj file. Otherwise, if you run the exe file, it's usually going to be, if you run the exe file, it's the directory of the exe file, unless you have like a shortcut and you change the start in to be a different working directory. Anyway, probably make a whole video on working directories. But for now, we'll have no change directory, which means don't change my original working directory, because that will most likely, if you don't have this, it'll most likely, once you've opened something or saved something, it'll break all of your other file loading for the rest of your application, because obviously it's going to be now relative to a folder such as assets scenes, if you're opening a scene file, instead of to the root that you would expect. So get open file name A, again using the ASCII version. We don't really need to use the ASCII version because it will use the compiler settings to figure it out, but we are here. We might even want to use the wide char version for different languages, but that's just how it is for now. This might not work with other languages. Equals true, blah, blah, blah. We return the actual, so once we've done that, we return the file path, right? And we create a string implicitly out of this char pointer. That's it, okay? Pretty simple stuff. Again, I probably won't explain much of this code because it's basically identical. It's just that you can see that it literally uses the same struct. The only difference is that we use get save file name instead of get open file name, and this is our dialog. So if it equals true, then we return this. Otherwise, it's important to know that we return an empty string, right? So if we get an empty string back, this dialog has effectively been canceled. So we need to handle that, right? So actually, this is probably something that we should enforce. So returns empty string if cancelled. These return efficiency, empty strings if cancelled. Okay, important stuff. All right. So going back to our editor layer, now we can actually do this stuff, which is pretty exciting. So inside editor layer, I just want to make sure that I'm getting all the code right, and I think I am. Going a little bit off script here. What we'll do is scroll down to where we did the this kind of stuff, and we're going to change these menu items around a bit. So we're going to have open. I like to have a ... meaning that like a dialog, I think that's the normal accepted convention anyway for application programming, at least on Windows, that if it has a ... it's going to open a further dialog. Whereas if it doesn't, it's not, right? So in other words, if we implemented a new, which we will, this wouldn't have it because it's just going to create a new one. It's not going to like open another dialog. And then we'll have save as. We won't have save for now. I guess we can, doesn't really matter. Save is just going to be the equivalent of, instead of opening a dialog, it uses whatever the current path is that's been opened or last saved as. It stores the file path of that, and it will just save into that without asking you. So new, and then we probably also want to add shortcuts to this. And I guess, how much time, how are we going here? Yeah, 11 minutes. All right, let's do it in this episode. So Control O will be the shortcut for open, Control N will be the shortcut for this, and this will be Control Shift S. So IMGUI will actually render these helpers for us, which is nice. So open. So now what we do is we basically do, let's include Hazel utils, platform utils, and then we'll do file dialogs, open file, except let's do it down here. Open file. Now the filter. The filter that we're going to use, and you may want to store this somewhere, I'm not sure where we'll store this, but I'll copy and paste it from here, is going to be this. And you can figure out the format for this by reading the Win32 documentation. But basically what you need is some null terminated strings here that are going to contain like all of, like the entire list of types that you want to support, right? So this is kind of like a convention that just happens. And let me just rephrase this a little bit. So this is actually one file, right? There are two null termination characters, but one is the text that appears in the description. So in other words, whoops, the wrong thing, Control O. So this all files thing, what you see, all files and the thing in brackets, that's this first string. The next string is the actual filter for it to use to filter these files by, right? So they are two different things, right? So this text that you see here is entirely the first string. That's why you need to put it like that. And it's nice to specify the type in brackets because that way you know exactly what a Hazel scene file is. Okay, so that's what it is. And obviously we get a string back, which is the file path. So when we get that string back, we need to check to see if it's empty. Because if it is empty, so if not empty, we'll write. If it is empty, then the dialog has been canceled, or the file is somehow empty path, which is wrong anyway. So we only do this is supposed to do deserialize. We only do deserialize from the file path if it's empty. Sorry, if it's not empty, right? Because if it's empty, that's wrong. Now, speaking of which, we need to create a new scene here. So active scene equals, what do we do here? I think it's just create ref, right? Create ref scene. So that's how we create a new empty scene. And we'll actually probably move this into a function in a minute because we also want to call this code when we press Control O. IMGUI is not going to do that for us. So we need to, we'll kind of copy this into another function so that we can also call it from our shortcut code. So we'll create a new thing, and then we actually need to do on viewport resize to resize it to the current viewport size, because if we don't do that, then our cameras aren't going to render properly. And we actually probably need to defer our cameras being recalculated, at least the matrices, but we'll see how that works out. So viewport size.x. Okay, so there's our viewport size. And then we need to also set the context of our scene hierarchy panel to be our new active scene because we've recreated it, right? Okay, there we go. So when we have multiple tabs, by the way, if we have multiple scenes open at once and we have multiple tabs, every time we switch tab, we're going to have to reset the context of the scene hierarchy panel. That should be pretty easy, obviously. Whew, that's it. That's our whole deserialization code. Really not that hard. Let's do new while we're at it. Again, this is basically just going to do this. Right? In fact, we could move this out into like new scene and then call a new scene and then, yeah, you get the point. Save as. Save as is also pretty simple. Instead of doing open file, we do save file with the exact same filter. And then if the file path is an empty, guess what? We serialize into the file path. It's actually a lot easier though, because we don't really need to, so we'll do file path. We don't really need to do any kind of like active scene changing because obviously we're working on the current scene, we're just saving it as. That's it. Let's run this. And if we do file, you can see we have file new, open, save as. You can add separators, by the way, to the menu items. You might want to do that if you want it to look even prettier, but I think this is fine for now. So if we do open, we should now be able to navigate to assets, scenes, and example.hazel. Beautiful, there it is. Right, if we do new, we should go back to a new scene. Good, let's do open again. And then let's, oh, here's a curveball. Let's switch to a different camera. And maybe let's make this a perspective camera. And let's move it like back a little bit. And then we'll be really cool with this. And let's move it a bit this way. We'll be really cool with this. And we'll also move maybe the green square a bit further back, right? So it's actually going to be smaller. Cool. Let's save that as, we'll do 3D example because that is actually 3D. 3D example, save. Okay, so now if I go new, oh, good, an error. That's actually, I'm not joking when I say good because I want to catch as many bugs as possible. So this is, okay, this is fine. So this is an error that happens when we basically try and create a new scene, but we don't reset the scene hierarchy panel's context, or rather the selected item. So we have a selection context here, and obviously if it's present, the properties panel is always going to want to draw that entity. What we've just done is deleted our whole scene because we've pressed new, so it's deleted the old scene, but the selection context is still pointing to an entity of that old scene that's now been deleted, and thus we get a crash. So to reproduce this and to make sure that I'm right in what I just said, I know I am because I've gone through this before on the live stream, but for you guys, if we open this, if we select an entity here and then go file new, there's that crash again, okay? So the way that we fix that is pretty simple. When we reset the scene's context to something else, we need to clear the selection context. Now, this is where it gets a little bit tricky as well, because you might want the selection context to go along with the scene. So in other words, if you have multiple tabs and you switch between them, you probably want to maybe switch to what you had selected last in your scene. Maybe, it's up to you. But obviously we're not doing tabs or anything yet, so we'll just do that. That's the easy fix. And now obviously if I was to try and repro that bug, file, open, example, and then I'll select camera, file new, you can see it works fine. So let's open our, first our example, and then we'll actually open our 3D example. And you can see everything works. Now, I've prepared a little special treat for you guys, if you can call it that. Inside on my desktop, I have a file that I created during a live stream when I was working this stuff out just to test it. And it's like kind of like a little 3D cube. So if I go file open and let's go to it, so it's a completely different directory now, right? pinkcube.hazel, let's open that. Check that out. We now have a 3D cube inside Hazel. So what this actually is, by the way, is 3 quads, right? We have the camera, we have the top, the right, and the left quad of varying different colors. So they're kind of a pink color that gets darker and darker, right? And I've just kind of rotated them and positioned them like in a slightly different place so that it kind of looks like a 3D cube. So surprise, it's not really 3D rendering from a model or anything like that with actual lighting in the shader, but it kind of looks like it is, which is cool. And this obviously proves that we can load this because I actually made this scene file in like the version of Hazel before I reverted to then record these videos. So yeah, definitely pretty cool. This is going to be the thumbnail for the video. Massive clickbait maybe, but whatever. That is how that works. Is there anything else in this episode that I wanted to do? I don't believe so. Everything looks... Yeah, the camera was supposedly not working, but I think it is now. So, because I must have fixed that in the other episode maybe. Okay, anyway, it doesn't matter. Everything looks like it's great. Let's go File New again, and let's open the pink cube again. Yeah, everything is working great. That is now really usable. We can go File New. Oh, the shortcuts. I don't know if anyone said anything, but no? Okay, good. Okay, the shortcuts. Also really simple to make, obviously. If we go into Editor Layer and we look at our events. So at the moment we have on event. Let's go ahead and actually create an event dispatcher. Dispatcher E. And then we want to do dispatcher.dispatch. And this will be a, I guess, key pressed event. And then how do we, I need to, maybe I'll search this code because I don't know if we replace the way that we dispatch things. We still use hz-bind event, but I think maybe that creates a lambda for us. So that's pretty easy. Okay, so we'll just use that. Probably should rewrite this whole thing, but doesn't matter. So we'll grab this and we'll go back to editor layer, key pressed event. So this will be editor layer on key pressed. And then let's see. Obviously this needs to be effectively on the first key press, so it's kind of like a key typed thing in a way, but it's really just with a repeat count of 0. So void, bool on key pressed event E. I don't know if that's all kind of included, but we'll see. Okay, so we do that. And then I don't even know if we need camera control. That might not be used anymore. But anyway, regardless. So here's what we can do. Switch, that's cool, little automation here. E.get key code. Now this is, these are kind of like our shortcuts, I'll say. And for the shortcuts, if the repeat count is greater than 0, we can just return, right? So we'll return false in this case. Because, return false. Because, I don't know, if you want to handle other keys, maybe you can do it first above here, but we'll just say that this block only works if we're dealing with shortcuts. So what do we need? Well, Control N for one, and you can obviously design a much more like in-depth shortcut system maybe that's easier to work with, but this is going to be nice and simple. So case hz, what are the key code? What are my key codes, man? Yeah, it's just key code. Namespace key, and it's an enum. Maybe that's so that it can get cast. Key, so we'll do this if, I guess if the control key is pressed, so left control, doesn't really matter if it's left or right. Whoops. So let's do left control, right control. Okay, and then we'll do, do we want to do a switch on that? No, I don't usually like doing this. I'll do it this way instead. So S, I forgot we were in a switch. So S, and also if input is key pressed, key control, left control. So we can do this out here. Control, Shift. Bit of improv here. So if S is pressed, and in this case it has to be both control, so if control and shift, then we'll actually save file as, or let's just do save as. Save as, and then that's that. Then we also have the N key. So just control for this one. I'll do new scene, save scene as. I guess we can collapse these, and then O was the other one, right? So I'll try and do these in order maybe. So new, and then open, and then so Control O is going to be open scene. All right. Did I do something wrong? Yes, I did. Yeah, sometimes the indentation is annoying. Okay, so new scene, open scene, save scene as. So let's implement it here. Void new scene. These are just commands, so they're just void functions. Void open scene. So this is going to be the dialog stuff, obviously. And then void save scene as. They're going to affect the actual main state. So let's implement these. Okay, and now if we go up to where we had our code for all of this stuff. So yeah, literally this is just going to become new scene. And we paste the code here. It's going to be really cool, by the way. There's this thing at the top right that you probably can't see because of my face cam, but I'll drag it down so you can see it. It's this thing. You can actually like split this into two, and you can actually, no, that's it. I think you can only do two. And this is useful because I can now kind of scroll up here and see what my code used to be, which is all the way over here, and then just stay down here, which is nice because I can see the file twice. You can also go like window and like new window. That will actually open the same file twice. A lot of people don't know that. This is turning into a Visual Studio tips session. But anyway, this will open the same file twice, which obviously means that, you know, you can put it on a different monitor and you can edit. Anyway, it's pretty cool. You can keep doing that stuff. Okay, so open is going to take this, and then finally save as is going to take this. And you can see they're all self-contained, so they all work. We don't need to change anything really. And then if we get rid of this funny mode here, then we can probably make this a lot easier. F5, let's do it. All right, so now let's just try and press Control O. Awesome. Pink cube.hazel. Let's save that as a green cube. Let's go Control N, new file, Control O. We've got our green cube. Let's open our green cube, and maybe let's change the hue to be like greenish. That's probably not bad. 90, we'll go with 90. So I'll go to all of these and just change their hues to be 90. Left is the last one. Now we've made a green cube, Control Shift S, 'cause we don't have Control S yet. Save it as green cube, Control N, Control O, pink cube, Control O, green cube, and everything works wonderfully. Okay, so that is basically all of our saving file menu stuff. Really quite simple as always. I told you writing a game engine was easy. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please don't forget to hit a like button. Also help support this on Patreon, patreon.com/thecherno. Best way to help support all this, if you like what you see and you want to see this project evolve into something much greater, is really the best place to support it, and I definitely appreciate all of your support. None of this would be possible without all of you people, so thank you so much. Next time, what are we doing next time? Oh, gizmos, right? So it would be nice to be able to, like, you know, select an entity and then move it using an on-screen gizmo, whether that be like a translation, rotation, scale gizmo, all of that stuff. So we're going to talk about how on earth we're going to get that stuff done in the next episode. Thank you guys for watching. I will see you next time. Goodbye.